Hey everyone, welcome back to another deep dive. Today we're taking a closer look at something you might not think about too much. All the safety regulations behind the cannabis we buy right here in Canada. We're going behind the scenes to kind of uncover what makes legal cannabis safe and...
Well, they can be pretty fascinating.
Yeah, I bet. You always hear about lab testing, but I never really grasped what that actually means.
Well, before any cannabis product can hit the shelves, it goes through some pretty intense testing to make sure it meets Health Canada's standards. It's a very comprehensive system.
So it's not just about making sure it's potent. There's more to it than just THC levels.
For sure. They're checking for like microbial contaminants,
Okay.
chemical contaminants, pesticide residues, even leftover solvents from extraction. And of course, they verify the cannabinoid content so you know what the label says is accurate.
Okay, so they're really going all out. But here's what gets interesting to me. One of the tools they use is irradiation. I always thought that just kind of zapped away any of the bad stuff. But it turns out even after irradiation, some remnants of those microbes can stick around.
Right. We call it microbial residue,
Mm.
and it includes things like dead cells, endotoxins, and mycotoxins.
Okay, so dead cells, I'm guessing those aren't a huge deal. Unless you're like eating fistfuls of them or something.
Yeah, not really a concern in the grand scheme of things. It's the endotoxins and mycotoxins that we need to take a closer look at.
Endotoxins, those sound familiar. Aren't those something our bodies already have to deal with anyway?
You can think of endotoxins as the alarm bells that bacteria set off when they die. They're part of the bacteria's cell wall. And when the bacteria are killed, these endotoxins are released. Now, our bodies can usually handle them, but for folks with sensitivities or respiratory issues, they can trigger inflammation and other immune responses.
So even though the bacteria are dead, they can still cause trouble.
Got it. And what about mycotoxins? What are those all about?
Mycotoxins are a bit more sinister. They're produced by certain molds, and they can be pretty nasty. The thing is, they're heat stable, meaning they don't break down even when you smoke or vape. Hold on. So even if the mold is gone, the toxins it produced are still there, just waiting to be inhaled. That's kind of unsettling.
It definitely raises some concerns, especially because inhaling these toxins can be way more problematic than ingesting them. Our lungs are very efficient at absorbing substances into the bloodstream.
So it's like a fast track into your system. That makes sense, but also, yikes.
And the interesting thing is that even with all these potential risks, Health Canada still permits irradiation. It's a very complex issue. There are a lot of factors to consider.
That's what I'm curious about. If there are all these concerns, why allow irradiation at all? It seems kind of counterintuitive.
Well, it really comes down to balancing safety and effectiveness. Irradiation is incredibly effective at killing off those really dangerous live pathogens that could make people really sick.
So it's like the lesser of two evils. They're choosing the method that prevents the most immediate and serious harm.
Exactly. Remember, cannabis is a plant, and like any agricultural product, it can be susceptible to microbial contamination. For someone with a compromised immune system, even a mild infection could be extremely serious.
I see. So they're prioritizing public health and trying to prevent those worst-case scenarios. But they're not just relying on irradiation and hoping for the best, right?
Oh, definitely not. They also mandate some very rigorous testing for mycotoxins to make sure the levels remain within safe limits. It's a multi-layered approach to minimizing risk.
That's reassuring. So it's not just about zapping everything and calling it a day. They're also keeping a close eye on those lingering residues.
Exactly. But knowing about these potential residues, it might make you a little more cautious about your cannabis choices, don't you think?
Honestly, yeah. It's making me think twice about where I buy my cannabis and how I store it. But before I go tossing out my entire stash, let's talk about the specific mycotoxins you mentioned. What kind of health risks are we talking about here?
Well, the effects can really vary, depending on the type of mycotoxin, how much is inhaled, and then individual factors like your overall health and sensitivities. But some common concerns include respiratory issues, things like inflammation and asthma, as well as more serious problems like kidney damage, and even an increased risk of certain cancers.
Whoa, okay. That's a pretty wide range of potential problems. Are there any specific mycotoxins we should be particularly aware of? Ones with names that would make me run screaming from the dispensary?
Yeah, there are a couple that are particularly notorious. One is called aflatoxin, which is actually classified as a carcinogen. It's produced by certain species of Aspergillus molds and has been linked to liver cancer.
Aflatoxin, got it. Definitely adding that to my mental list of things to avoid. What about others?
Another one worth mentioning is ochratoxin A, which is particularly harmful to the kidneys. It can cause damage. and even lead to kidney failure in severe cases.
So we've got aflatoxins potentially messing with the liver, ochratoxin A going after the kidneys. It's making me want to invest in an industrial strength air purifier for my lungs.
I think that really highlights the importance of understanding these potential risks. It allows you to make more informed choices and be more aware of things like proper storage and sourcing your cannabis from reputable producers.
Absolutely. Knowledge is power, as they say. But this whole conversation raises a question for me. If Health Canada is so focused on safety, why not just ban irradiation altogether? Wouldn't it be better to find a completely risk-free method?
That's a great question. And it really gets to the heart of the matter. The reality is there's no perfect solution when it comes to cannabis safety. Every method has its pros and cons, and it often comes down to weighing those potential risks against the benefits.
I'm starting to see the dilemma. It's not about eliminating all risk, because that might not even be possible, but it's about minimizing the most significant threats. It's all about finding that balance, isn't it?
Exactly. And in this case, the benefits of irradiation, especially in terms of preventing outbreaks of those potentially deadly pathogens, are seen as outweighing those residual risks, especially when combined with that rigorous testing and the quality control measures.
So it's a calculated risk based on the best available scientific evidence and a commitment to public health. It's not about achieving zero risk, but about managing and minimizing it as much as possible.
Precisely. And it's also about empowering consumers with the knowledge they need to make informed decisions. Knowing about the potential for mycotoxins might make you more careful about where you buy your cannabis,
Yeah.
how you store it, and even how you consume it.
Right. You might choose vaporizing over smoking, for example, or be extra diligent about checking for signs of mold before using a product. It's about taking control of your own safety within the parameters of the regulations.
Exactly. Awareness leads to action, and informed action can significantly reduce your exposure to those potential risks.
Well said. This deep dive has definitely been eye-opening, and I bet our listeners are feeling the same way. It's a good reminder that even in a highly regulated market like Canada, it pays to be an informed and proactive consumer.
I couldn't agree more.
Now, before we wrap things up, I want to touch on one more crucial aspect of cannabis safety: the power of personal choice. We've talked a lot about the potential risks associated with irradiated cannabis, but I don't want anyone to think we're saying don't use cannabis. It's about empowering people to make choices that align with their personal risk tolerance and health goals.
I completely agree. It's about having all the information, so you can weigh those potential benefits against the potential risks and make a choice that feels right for you.
Exactly. And it's also about recognizing that everyone's situation is different. Someone with a compromised immune system, for example, might choose to be extra cautious about potential contaminants, while someone who's young and healthy might have a different perspective on acceptable risk.
That's a key point. Individual circumstances and health conditions play a huge role in how we perceive and manage risk. There's no one-size-fits-all answer.
And that's where honest conversations with healthcare providers come in. If you're unsure about the potential risks or benefits of cannabis use, talking to your doctor or a qualified medical professional can help you navigate those complexities and make informed decisions.
Yeah, absolutely. Healthcare professionals can give you really personalized advice based on your specific health history and your individual needs. They can help you assess your risk factors, talk about potential interactions with any medications you're currently taking, and really guide you on the safest and most effective ways to use cannabis, if that's something you choose to do.
It's all about making informed choices, not letting fear or misinformation dictate your decisions. And that's what we've really tried to do in this deep dive. Give you the information you need to navigate the world of cannabis with confidence and a clear understanding of everything involved.
We really covered a lot of ground today. We explored the whole mandatory testing process here in Canada, dove into the complexities of irradiation and those microbial residues, and really emphasized the importance of making informed choices and having those open conversations with your healthcare provider. It's been quite a journey.
Yeah, it has. And I feel like I've learned so much along the way. I'm definitely going to be more mindful about where I get my cannabis and how I store it from now on.
That's great to hear. Glad you're taking away some practical tips from our conversation.
Absolutely. Speaking of practical tips, before we wrap up, what's one piece of advice you would give to our listeners who are now a lot more aware of these potential risks associated with irradiated cannabis? What's the one thing they should keep in mind when making those choices?
That's a good question. I think the most important thing to remember is knowledge is power. Now that you know about the potential presence of microbial residues, you can make more informed decisions. Do your research, Ask questions. And don't be afraid to be a little picky about where you buy your cannabis. Reputable producers who are transparent about their testing and quality control processes are definitely out there.
That's great advice. It's about being an active participant in your own health and well-being, even when it comes to something as seemingly simple as choosing cannabis.
Exactly. And remember, there are resources available to help you. Don't hesitate to reach out to your healthcare provider or a trusted dispensary for more guidance.
Well said. It's been a fascinating and eye-opening deep dive. Thanks so much for joining us today.
It's been my pleasure. Always happy to shed some light on this complex but really important topic.
And to all of our listeners out there, thanks for tuning in. We hope you learned something new and that you feel empowered to make informed choices about your cannabis use. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and as always, happy exploring